In this lecture, I'll talk about some important concepts of pragmatics, which may not be much talked about in a typical class of pragmatics, but still they run or they provide a support to understand many important concepts of pragmatics. In other words, we can say they may not be in the limelight in a class of pragmatics. However, they provide some essential support to understand some other key concepts within the domain of pragmatics. I'll just begin by three important areas named as ambiguity, disambiguation, and vagueness. Ambiguity happens when a sequence of linguistic expressions or words or a sentence or phrase provide more than one meaning, and we may be sometimes not clear to know which meaning is more applicable. But in certain situations, a good or conscious reader or listener or speaker himself would be able to understand this ambiguity and would be able to decipher the meanings implied by a certain speaker or a writer. But still, as far as the language is concerned, the ambiguity remains. In other words, we can say ambiguous expressions are those which provide more than one meaning in a language. In order to illustrate this further, I would just like to cite an example which is in front of you. She hit a man with umbrella. So unless you don't listen to this from a person with clear indication of intonation or stress on certain parts of the sentence, you won't be able to judge that what kind of meaning has been conveyed. For example, this statement may give you two meanings in general. First, that the lady hit a man with the help of umbrella. I mean, she used umbrella to hit the man. Or the other possibility is that the lady hit a man who was holding the umbrella in his hand. So, but we could obviously understand this only when we know the context. And there could be certain types of ambiguity. One is the structural ambiguity, which is based on the structure or syntax of a sentence, and it is usually is related to the combination of words which involve more than one word. So the example which I have just given is about umbrella and the lady. This is a typical example of structural ambiguity, where the structure of the sentence is such that it creates more than one meaning. Other example could possibly the sentences like they are fighting fish. Lexical ambiguity occurs when a certain word in a sentence or a phrase give us two different clues or meanings. For example, if we employ the word bank in a sentence, so the bank might mean the bank of a river or the bank a place which carries on some financial activity. We deposit our money or money in the bank. So it could be a financial place or it could possibly be bank of the river. So you could only know which bank is being referred to when you know the context. Disambiguation is the process which is reverse to ambiguity. It implies that if there is ambiguity in a certain sentence or a word, the which option the listener or speaker clicks to is actually the one which leads us to disambiguation. For example, if there is an option between bank of the river and the financial, the place where we conduct financial transactions, the bank, if we click to the one of these options, we have actually completed the process of disambiguation. It means we have clarified if there was any confusion in the meaning because of multiple senses which a certain word have. In other words, we can say that it's the process of selecting the intended sense of an ambiguous word, phrase, or sentence from among the senses allowed by the language or grammar. It is in most of general real life situations, the process of disambiguation is natural and unconscious because and also automatic, because we automatically select the option in a certain context. For example, if somebody says, I need to go to bank before I go for the shopping, in most of the situation, this would mean that he needs to go to the bank in order to draw money, the place which conducts financial transactions. He is referring to that typical place and not the bank of the river. So we don't have to think about it much before we decide that it is probably the place where he keeps his money. So instead of the other one. So as I said earlier, it's probably in most of situations, the process of disambiguation would be natural and automatic, and we would not have to bother much about it. Vagueness is something when something is not clearly defined, is something which is exaggerated, and on the very face of it, it seems out of place. So when the meaning of a certain word or expression are not clearly defined, that generates the elements of vagueness. And we all face certain vague expressions or vague predicates in a certain in various conversations we conduct every day. Even a simple expression, when it is used beyond its normal use, may create certain vagueness about it. Metaphorical expressions and other similar uses of language do create vagueness in our conversation. For example, a very simple word, bald, can create some vagueness if it is not used in its typical sense. For example, bald is used for somebody who do not have any hair. So when we know that, when we use this word bald for the somebody who do not have any hair on his head, so we can say that this statement is true and is not vague. But if it is used in any other situation, this would create a lot of vagueness, and then we'll have to dig deep into the context or the intention of the speaker in order to know that what real meanings are there. So in order to reduce or eliminate vagueness, we have to rely heavily on the context. Vagueness in this example, for example, the example about John is bald can be removed if we know the proposition on which John has been called bald. So as I said, and I will conclude with the same words, that vagueness can only be removed when we have a deep knowledge of the context.